The deepest wounds are often given by the people we once trusted enough to stand close to. A stranger may insult you, and the words disappear before evening. But when someone you love betrays you, dismisses your pain, abandons you, lies to you, or treats your heart as though it were something disposable, the wound can remain long after the conversation ends. It may follow you into the quiet kitchen after midnight. It may sit beside you while cold coffee rests untouched on the table. It may appear when your phone lights up, and for one brief second, you hope their name will be there. Then the screen goes dark again. Sometimes the person who hurt you moves on as though nothing happened. They laugh, work, travel, sleep, and continue their life. Meanwhile, you carry the unanswered questions. How could they do that? Did I mean so little? Why did they never apologize? Why am I still hurting when they seem perfectly fine? This is one of the most difficult forms of suffering. The event may be over, but the mind keeps returning to it, searching for an explanation that might finally make the pain feel reasonable. You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. Tonight, we are not going to pretend that hurt disappears because we repeat a peaceful phrase. We are not going to say that forgiveness means allowing someone to harm you again. We are not going to tell you that kind people never become angry, or that spiritual people should remain silent when they are mistreated. Buddhist wisdom asks for something more honest. It asks us to see the wound clearly, to understand what keeps it alive, and to choose what we will carry forward. There is an old tension inside nearly every wounded heart. We want peace, but we keep returning to the memory. We want freedom, but we wait for the person who hurt us to give us permission to be free. We want to move on, but part of us believes that letting go would mean what they did was acceptable. So we hold the pain tightly, thinking it protects our dignity. Yet after enough time, we may discover that we are no longer holding the pain. The pain is holding us. A woman named Ellen learned this after the end of a 27-year marriage. Her husband had not left after one dramatic argument. He had been leaving slowly for years. He stopped listening when she spoke. He became impatient with ordinary questions. He stayed late at work and guarded his phone. Then one Sunday morning, while sunlight fell across the breakfast table, he told her he loved someone else. The coffee maker was still running. A grocery list lay beside Ellen's hand. Milk, bread, apples, laundry soap. She would remember those small details more clearly than his exact words. This is often how shock enters the mind. The world breaks, but the ordinary objects remain where they were. After he left, Ellen replayed the marriage night after night. She searched every conversation for clues. She remembered vacations, birthdays, and evenings when he had seemed distant. She asked herself what she had missed and what she should have done differently. Her husband had hurt her once through betrayal. Her mind hurt her 1,000 more times through repetition. This does not mean she was responsible for his actions. It does not mean she should have ignored the truth or rushed toward forgiveness. It means that the original wound and the mind's continued relationship with the wound were not the same thing. In Buddhist teaching, suffering is often described as having more than one layer. There is the pain of what happened. Then there is the pain created by resistance, repetition, judgment, and the desperate wish that the past had been different. The first pain may be unavoidable. The second may continue long after danger has passed. Good people still suffer because goodness is not a contract with life. Kindness does not prevent betrayal. Meditation does not remove uncertainty. Compassion does not guarantee that others will be compassionate in return. A person may live honestly and still lose someone they love. A caring parent may raise a child who grows distant. A loyal employee may be dismissed unfairly. A devoted partner may be deceived. A gentle person may be spoken to cruelly. Buddhist practice is not a bargain in which we behave well and receive only pleasant outcomes. Wisdom does not control everything that happens. It changes how we meet what cannot be controlled. The first obstacle after deep hurt is often attachment. Not only attachment to the person, but attachment to the version of the past we wanted to be true. We may cling to the belief that they were who we hoped they were. We may cling to the future we imagined together. We may cling to the apology they should give, the remorse they should feel, or the explanation that would finally make everything clear. A father named Robert waited 6 years for his adult son to call. They had argued after Robert criticized his son's marriage. Harsh words were exchanged. Pride rose on both sides. The son stopped visiting, and Robert told everyone that he was waiting for the boy to come to his senses. Every Christmas, Robert left the porch light on. Every birthday, he checked his phone more often than usual. His wife suggested that he call first, but Robert refused. "I am the father," he said. "He knows where I live." What Robert did not say was that he was afraid. He was afraid his son would reject the call. He was afraid he would have to admit that his words had been cruel. He was afraid that reaching out first would make him look weak. So he remained attached to the idea that reconciliation had to happen in a particular way. His son had to return. His son had to apologize. His son had to understand. For 6 years, Robert protected his pride and lost 6 years of possible conversation. Attachment often hides behind fairness. We say, they should be the one to make this right. And perhaps they should. But the deeper question is not who should take the first step. The deeper question is whether we are willing to let another person's refusal determine the condition of our mind. A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. A teacher may explain forgiveness. A therapist may help you understand the pattern. A friend may sit beside you during a difficult night. A parent may offer advice. A child may ask a simple question that opens your heart, but no one can breathe for you when anger rises. No one can set your boundary for you. No one can make the call, speak the truth, or release the fantasy that the past will someday become different. The second obstacle is resentment. Resentment can feel like loyalty to our own pain. It says, if I stop being angry, they win. It says, if I forgive, I betray the part of me that suffered. It says, if I let this go, the world will never understand how wrong it was. But resentment does not remain pointed only at the person who caused it. It spreads. It enters new relationships. It changes the tone of our voice. It makes us suspicious of kindness. It turns ordinary mistakes into evidence that everyone will eventually hurt us. A nurse named Caroline discovered this after a close friend shared something private about her. Caroline had trusted this friend during a difficult period of depression. She had spoken honestly about her fears, her marriage, and the exhaustion she felt working in a hospital. Months later, she learned that her private words had been repeated to others. The betrayal was real. Caroline ended the friendship, and that boundary was understandable. But the wound did not stop there. She began holding back from everyone. When a coworker asked how she was doing, Caroline said, "Fine," even when she was not. When her sister offered support, Caroline changed the subject. When her husband asked why she seemed distant, she said she was tired. She had protected herself from one untrustworthy person by becoming unreachable to every trustworthy person. Resentment convinced her that closing the heart was the same as protecting it, but a closed heart does not only keep pain out, it also keeps love from entering. In Buddhist teaching, anger is not treated as a moral failure. It is understood as a state that arises when we feel threatened, violated, dismissed, or afraid. The practice is not to shame anger. The practice is to know it before it chooses our words and actions. You may feel anger and still choose not to send the message. You may feel anger and still leave the room before speaking. You may feel anger and still tell the truth without cruelty. You may feel anger and still decide that contact is no longer safe. Forgiveness is not the same as returning. You can release hatred without reopening the door. You can understand why someone behaved as they did without giving them access to harm you again. You can wish that they awaken without standing close enough to be wounded by their sleep. Compassion does not require the abandonment of wisdom. A respectful boundary may be one of the most compassionate actions available, because it ends the conditions that allow harm to continue. The third obstacle is the illusion of control. After being hurt, the mind often believes that if it analyzes the event enough, it can prevent all future pain. You study every detail. You question your judgment. You search for the exact moment you should have known. You make promises. I will never trust so easily again. I will never need anyone this much. I will never allow myself to be surprised. But there is a quiet tragedy in trying to become impossible to hurt. You also become difficult to love. A man named Daniel was cheated by a business partner he had known since college. The partner altered financial records and left Daniel responsible for debts he had not created. The practical consequences were serious. Daniel needed a lawyer, an accountant, and months of difficult work. He had to face what happened directly. Buddhist wisdom does not replace legal action, professional help, or personal responsibility. But even after the immediate crisis ended, Daniel remained at war. He checked every invoice 3 times. He assumed every delay was deception. He questioned the motives of employees who had shown years of loyalty. At home, he interrogated his teenage daughter whenever she changed plans. He believed vigilance would protect him. Instead, vigilance became a prison. Control promises safety, but can never fully deliver it. No matter how careful we are, people remain unpredictable. Bodies age. Relationships change. Markets fall. Plans fail. Honest efforts sometimes lead to painful outcomes. Accepting uncertainty does not mean becoming careless. It means taking wise action without demanding a guarantee. The first sign that your heart is beginning to heal may be so small that no one else notices. You react less quickly. The message arrives. The familiar name appears on the screen. Your chest tightens. Once, you would have answered immediately, driven by anger, fear, or the need to be understood. Now you place the phone down. You feel your feet on the floor. You take 3 conscious breaths. You let the first wave move through before deciding what to do. This pause is not weakness. It is the space in which freedom becomes possible. What happens in that pause? The old habit still appears, but you no longer obey it automatically. In Buddhist practice, awareness does not always prevent the first reaction. The body may tense. The heart may race. The memory may rise. Awareness gives you a chance to choose the second movement. A woman once asked a monk, "How do I know whether my meditation is working?" The monk asked, "What happened the last time someone insulted you?" She said, "I became angry." He asked, "And then?" She replied, "I waited before speaking." The monk smiled. The change was not that anger never appeared. The change was that anger was no longer the only voice in the room. Another sign of inner change appears when you need less approval from the person who hurt you. For a long time, you may want them to admit what they did. You imagine the conversation. They finally understand. They finally apologize without excuses. They finally see your value. But one morning, perhaps while washing a cup or opening a curtain, you realize that their understanding is no longer required for your healing. This does not mean the apology would be meaningless. It means your life is no longer waiting outside their door. You begin to ask different questions. Not, do they finally see that I was right? But, am I living in a way that is honest now? Not, do they regret losing me? But, am I caring for the life still in front of me? Not, will they ever understand my pain? But, have I understood what this pain is asking me to change? A new opportunity does not guarantee peace. More money does not guarantee peace. A spiritual teacher does not guarantee transformation. Peace grows through what you practice repeatedly. This is where karma is often misunderstood. Karma is not a cosmic punishment system that ensures everyone who hurts you will suffer in the way you hope. It is not a promise that good people will always receive pleasant outcomes. In Buddhist teaching, karma is connected to intention, repetition, action, and the way habits shape the mind and influence future conditions. When a person lies repeatedly, they train the mind toward deception. When a person acts with cruelty, cruelty becomes easier. When a person speaks with restraint, restraint becomes stronger. When you rehearse resentment each night, resentment becomes a familiar home. When you practice awareness, honesty, and compassion, those qualities become more available. Karma asks us not to obsess over when another person will get what they deserve. It asks what we are creating in ourselves through the way we respond now. The person who harmed you is responsible for their actions. You are responsible for what you practice in their aftermath. Another sign of healing is that you begin setting boundaries without needing to punish. There is a difference between saying, "I cannot continue this conversation while you are shouting," and saying, "I hope you suffer without me." There is a difference between leaving a harmful relationship and making revenge the purpose of your life. There is a difference between refusing contact and secretly monitoring the other person every day. A calm boundary does not need a dramatic performance. It may sound like this: I care about you, but I will not accept being spoken to that way. I forgive what I can, but I am not returning to the same situation. I am willing to talk when we can both speak honestly. I will not lend money again. I need distance. I am asking for professional help. I am leaving. Sometimes compassion means staying and working through difficulty. Sometimes compassion means stepping away. The wise question is not, what makes me look kind? The wise question is, what reduces harm without creating more harm? A mother named Teresa struggled with this when her adult daughter repeatedly borrowed money and disappeared for months. Each time the daughter returned, she brought apologies, promises, and a new emergency. Teresa wanted to help. She feared that saying no would make her a bad mother, but the money did not heal her daughter's problems. It delayed responsibility and deepened the pattern. One evening, Teresa sat alone at the kitchen table with an unpaid bill in front of her. The porch light was on, though no one was expected. She realized that rescuing her daughter was not the same as loving her. The next time the call came, Teresa listened. She spoke gently. She offered food, a ride to treatment, and help finding professional support. But she did not send money. Her daughter became angry. She accused Teresa of abandonment. Teresa cried after the call. A wise boundary does not always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like grief. But grief does not mean the boundary is wrong. It may mean you are releasing the role you once believed love required you to play. Another sign of inner change is that you can forgive without denying memory. There was once a monk who carried a heavy stone in his robe. Every day, he walked with it pressed against his chest. When others asked why, he said, "This stone reminds me of the man who betrayed me." Years passed. The man who betrayed him moved to another province. The monk continued carrying the stone. One morning, an old teacher asked, "Does the man know you carry this?" "No," said the monk. "Does the stone punish him?" "No." "Then who is carrying the weight?" The monk looked down at the shape beneath his robe. He understood. Forgiveness does not erase the event. It changes who carries it. You may remember what happened for the rest of your life. Certain dates may remain difficult. A song may return you to an old room. A particular tone of voice may awaken the body's fear. Healing does not require amnesia. It means the memory is no longer giving commands. You remember, but you do not become the memory. You feel, but you do not drown in the feeling. You learn, but you do not build your home inside the lesson. For some wounds, therapy may be necessary. Trauma may live not only in thought, but in the nervous system. Professional support, medical care, community, and safe relationships can be important parts of healing. Meditation is not a replacement for treatment. Compassion is not a reason to remain in danger. Spiritual practice should not be used to silence pain that needs attention. The Buddha's path begins with seeing suffering clearly, not decorating it, not denying it, not pretending to be beyond it. Another sign appears when you stop turning another person's behavior into a judgment of your worth. A partner's betrayal does not prove that you were unlovable. A parent's emotional absence does not prove that you were too difficult to care for. A friend's disloyalty does not prove that trust was foolish. A manager's unfairness does not define your ability. Someone may fail to value what is valuable. That does not reduce its value. A violin does not become worthless because it was placed in the hands of someone who never learned to listen. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. Your honesty is wealth. Your ability to apologize is wealth. The friend who answers at midnight is wealth. A family meal where people feel safe is wealth. A home without fear is wealth. The capacity to sleep without hiding from your conscience is wealth. The courage to become different from those who hurt you is wealth. A peaceful later life is not only measured by savings, property, or status. It may mean fewer regrets. It may mean relationships that no longer require pretending. It may mean manageable needs, a stable home, enough health to enjoy the morning, someone to call, and a mind that no longer fights every memory. A person can own many things and still live in constant fear. Another person may have a simple room, cooling tea, an aging dog asleep near the door, and a heart that knows enough. When you are deeply hurt, there may be a temptation to become hard. Hardness feels strong because it does not bend. But what does not bend may break. Compassion is not softness without wisdom. It is the courage to remain human without becoming available for repeated harm. It is possible to say, what you did was wrong, without building your identity around hatred. It is possible to leave and still refuse revenge. It is possible to grieve the relationship without returning to it. It is possible to understand that a person acted from fear, addiction, immaturity, selfishness, or unresolved pain while still holding them accountable. Understanding is not excusing. It is seeing the causes clearly enough that you do not continue them. A man who was raised by an angry father may become an angry father himself. His history explains something. It does not remove responsibility. At some point, every adult must decide whether pain will become permission. The chain of harm continues when each person says, I suffered, so now my behavior is understandable. The chain weakens when someone says, I suffered, and because I know what suffering feels like, I will not pass it forward. Another sign of healing is that gratitude begins returning in ordinary moments. Not dramatic gratitude, not gratitude for the betrayal itself. You do not need to call cruelty a blessing, but perhaps you notice morning light entering the room. You taste your food instead of eating while replaying an argument. You hear the voice of a loyal friend and realize that not everyone has left. You sit on a park bench and feel the sun on your hands. The world, which had become only the site of your wound, slowly becomes larger again. This is important. Pain narrows attention. When hurt is fresh, everything points back to it. A couple laughing reminds you of what you lost. A family gathering reminds you of who is absent. A silent phone becomes proof that no one cares. Healing widens the field. The pain is still present, but so is the sky. So is the neighbor who brings your mail when you are sick. So is the child waiting for your attention. So is the body asking for rest. So is the necessary task in front of you. Gratitude does not deny suffering. It prevents suffering from becoming the only truth. Another sign appears when you accept that closure may not come in the form you expected. Some people never apologize. Some people rewrite the story to protect themselves. Some people leave before you can ask the questions. Some people die while the relationship is still unresolved. A woman named June carried anger toward her mother for most of her adult life. Her mother had been critical, emotionally distant, and difficult to please. June spent years trying to earn approval that rarely came. When her mother became ill, June imagined there would finally be a conversation. She hoped her mother would admit the harm, explain her distance, perhaps say the words June had wanted since childhood. But in the hospital, her mother was confused. Some days she did not recognize June. The hope for conversation never happened. One evening, June sat beside the bed while machines made their quiet sounds in the dim room. Her mother was asleep. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and coffee. June felt the old demand rise. You owe me an explanation. Then she saw her mother's hand resting on the blanket. It looked smaller than she remembered. Older. Human. June did not suddenly decide that her childhood had been acceptable. She did not receive the apology she deserved, but something softened. She understood that she could continue waiting for words her mother might never be capable of giving, or she could begin grieving the mother she had needed, but never fully had. Closure sometimes comes when the answer arrives. Sometimes it comes when we stop demanding one. June began writing letters she did not send. She spoke with a therapist. She allowed anger, sadness, and compassion to exist together. She learned that two truths can share the same room. Her mother had hurt her. Her mother had also been wounded by her own life. June's pain was real. Her mother's limitations were real. Understanding both did not cancel either. Another sign of change is that you begin taking responsibility for the life that remains. After deep hurt, waiting can become a hidden form of attachment. We wait to feel ready. We wait for motivation. We wait for the memory to stop hurting. We wait for someone to notice how much we have suffered. But life continues while we wait. The dishes still need washing. The appointment still needs scheduling. The body needs movement. The child needs to be heard. The friend needs a reply. The application needs to be submitted. The room needs morning light. You do not have to repair your whole life today. Do one necessary task at a time. Take 3 conscious breaths. Write down 1 fear. Make the delayed phone call. Sit quietly for 10 minutes. Ask for professional help. Apologize honestly. Set 1 respectful boundary. Do 1 kind act privately. Rest without calling yourself lazy. Turn off 1 source of noise. Drink water. Walk to the end of the street. These actions may seem small compared with the size of the wound. But a life changes direction through repeated small movements. Peace is rarely 1 grand decision. It is practiced in ordinary moments when no one is watching. There is a Zen story about 2 monks traveling after heavy rain. They came to a flooded road where a woman stood unable to cross without ruining her clothes. 1 monk lifted her, carried her through the water, and placed her safely on the other side. The monks continued walking. Hours later, the 2nd monk said, "We are not supposed to touch women. Why did you carry her?" The 1st monk replied, "I put her down at the river. Are you still carrying her?" The story is simple, but its question is not. What are you still carrying? The conversation from 5 years ago? The rejection from childhood? The apology that never came? The image of someone choosing another life? The belief that you should have known better? The shame of having trusted? Letting go does not mean pretending the river was never there. It means noticing that you have crossed it. You are allowed to stop living as though the moment is still happening. The body may need time to understand this. The mind may understand before the heart does. You may release the story today and pick it up again tomorrow. This does not mean you have failed. Practice is repetition. You notice. You understand. You choose differently. Then you protect the change. To protect your peace, you may need to reduce contact with people who feed old wounds. You may need to stop rereading messages. You may need to stop checking their social media. You may need to change the subject when relatives carry gossip. You may need to decline an invitation. You may need to admit that loneliness has been pulling you back towards someone unsafe. You may need to build new friendships slowly. You may need to return to meditation after months away. You may need to sleep, eat, move, and care for the body that has been carrying so much. Protecting peace requires honesty. It requires gratitude, humility, boundaries, restraint, forgiveness, responsibility, and compassion. Not once. Repeatedly. A garden does not remain clear because weeds were removed 1 time. A mind does not remain peaceful because 1 insight appeared during a quiet evening. Old habits return. The wish to prove yourself returns. The fantasy of revenge returns. The need for approval returns. You notice them without shame. Then you choose again. This is how karma changes. Intention becomes action. Action becomes repetition. Repetition becomes character. Character influences the conditions you create around you. A harsh word may become the beginning of another wound. A restrained word may end a pattern that has existed for generations. An honest apology may not repair everything, but it changes the direction of the next moment. A boundary may disappoint someone, but it can protect what is healthy. A private act of kindness may never be seen, yet it shapes the heart that performed it. Compassion is a way of living, not a ritual for receiving rewards. You do not act kindly, so the universe will guarantee an easy life. You act kindly because cruelty strengthens cruelty within you. You speak truthfully because each lie makes the next lie easier. You practice restraint because every reaction becomes part of the mind you must live with. The person who hurt you may never understand any of this. They may continue in the same way. They may face consequences. They may not. Your freedom cannot depend on watching their fate. There is a particular exhaustion in waiting for life to punish someone on your behalf. Release the courtroom in your mind. You are not required to declare them innocent. You are allowed to stop holding the trial every night. Perhaps one day, you will remember them and feel nothing sharp. Perhaps the memory will always carry some sadness. Peace does not require that every pain disappear. It means pain no longer decides the direction of your life. Think again of Ellen at the breakfast table, the morning her marriage ended. For months, she believed healing would begin when she understood everything. But understanding came slowly and imperfectly. She never received a complete explanation. Some questions remained unanswered. What changed her life was not a final conversation with her former husband. It was a quiet morning nearly a year later. Rain tapped against the window. She made coffee and sat at the same table. The grocery list was different now. Tea, soup, flowers, birdseed. She noticed that she was not waiting for the phone to ring. She was not rehearsing what she would say. She was simply drinking coffee while rain moved down the glass. The moment was ordinary. Nothing dramatic had happened. But Ellen realized she had returned to her own life. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. Perhaps this is where your healing begins. Not in forgetting, not in winning, not in hearing the perfect apology, but in no longer organizing your days around the wound. You still remember, but you also eat breakfast. You still feel sadness, but you call a friend. You still carry caution, but you allow one trustworthy person to know you. You still feel anger, but you do not hand it your voice. You still grieve, but you open the curtain. You still have questions, but you stop making your peace wait for answers. Night does not become morning all at once. First, the darkness becomes slightly less complete. Then a pale line appears at the edge of the window. Objects begin to take shape. The room has not changed, but you can see it differently. Healing can be like that. Not sudden, not perfect, not free of difficult nights. But gradually, the mind stops fighting every memory. The heart learns that letting go is not giving up. It is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. Somewhere tonight, a porch lamp is still on. Someone is waiting for a call. Someone is staring at a message they should not send. Someone is lying awake beside a person who feels far away. Someone is mourning a friendship, a marriage, a parent, a child, a future, or a version of themselves they can no longer return to. Perhaps that person is you. Take one slow breath. You do not need to solve your whole life before morning. You do not need to forgive before you are ready. You do not need to return to harm. You do not need to pretend that what happened was small. But you may be ready to stop giving the past every room in your house. Leave one room for quiet. Leave one chair for hope. Leave one window open to the morning. Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. And awareness begins here. In this breath. In this pause. In the choice not to repeat what hurt you. In the courage to ask for help. In the humility to apologize when you have caused pain. In the wisdom to leave when staying destroys the heart. In the compassion to forgive without returning to abuse. In the strength to continue living without the answer you thought you needed. The rain may not stop tonight. The phone may remain silent. The person may never become who you hoped they would be. But your life is still here. Your breath is still here. The next kind action is still available. The next honest word is still possible. The next morning is already on its way. Let the past be a teacher, not a prison. Let awareness change the direction of your habits. Let wisdom protect what pain once exposed. Let compassion keep you human. And let go not because the wound did not matter, but because your life matters too. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.